Let's just do it, eh? Hello and welcome to my jungle. Welcome back to my jungle. What if you're not coming back? You're probably coming back because you're probably one of 3 family members that I've told to watch this video. Hello and welcome to my jungle. Hello, welcome to my jungle. One of those has got to be good, surely. Hello, welcome to my jungle. I was planning on walking around my house today and finding 5 plants that I find super easy to care for and I think would make really good plants for beginners, but I actually ended up with 10 and some of them have a couple of plants within that I want to show. The longer I've had houseplants over the years, I guess the more my taste in houseplants has refined, and it really has refined down to plants that are quite easy care because my house is pretty dry, so cutting that out, I need plants that can handle lower humidity because that's all I can really offer, unless they're now in my IKEA greenhouse cabinet. I do own 1 allocation now, which is super fun. But yeah, I guess a lot of the plants around my house are easy care plants. I love easy care plants. That's one of the traits about a plant that makes my heart swell. So I have a lot of them around my house. The first plant that I want to showcase here is my Monstera siltepecana. These used to be a bit harder to come by and I see them pretty much everywhere now at plant nurseries and at Bunnings. It has these really beautiful, kind of give me like prehistoric vibes, reptilian vibes. Oh, it's so pretty. This is his little guardian goblin and crystal. Because plants aren't fun enough as they are, I need to add more things to the pots. You can let this one trail down as a hanging plant or give it something to climb up. I have this tiny little DIY moss pole that I've sort of bobby pinned the plant to very loosely. I've had this plant in various amounts of light. I do find that the sort of scaly details show up more if the plant does have a little bit more light. It's currently living in really quite low light. It's still growing and pushing out leaves and thriving somehow, but doesn't have as much of the silvery sort of color to the leaves. They are fresh leaves, so they might develop more color. Anyway, I've had this plant thrive in low light and higher light, so you can put it in most places around your house. I let it dry out quite a lot between waterings. When it was a bare, you can see this little leaf damage here. It didn't enjoy that quite as much, but it definitely tolerates it now. It has a super airy soil and a terracotta pot. Both of those things are going to make the plant dry out faster. And I still feel like I'm not watering this plant super often. And it's happy with whatever I give it. Love that. So the next plants that I want to talk about are actually notoriously difficult plants to keep. And the 2 plants that I want to mention aren't even the same genus of plant. But it is my string of pearls and also my string of hearts. I have a normal string of hearts and the variegated string of hearts, and I find them both as easy as each other, and I find the care for my string of hearts and my string of pearls are the same, so that's why I thought I'd talk about them together. I think when I very first got into houseplants, I think I killed 1 or 2 string of pearls, which is pretty common from what I see on Facebook groups and things like this. Looking back, I just didn't have the right information to go on. So the biggest tip that I have for my string of pearls and my string of hearts is that I'll very gently sort of give the pearls or the hearts a little squeeze like this. And right now these pearls are super firm, which means that it's really happy and not thirsty at all. The hearts are the same. I'll just give the hearts a little bit of a squeeze, and if they are soft, then it's time to water, and if they're firm, I just leave it alone. Both the string of hearts and the string of pearls are going to want a fair bit of light. I have both my hearts hanging up in a kind of south facing window, and my string of pearls used to live outside for years, and I very recently brought them inside to trail down the side of my cabinet. So they're getting light from the grow lights inside the cabinet for the pearls that are trailing down, and they're also in a north facing window getting quite high light throughout the day. And that's pretty much it for the care for those, I find them super easy care. Now that I know just that one trick, I find my pearls and my heart some of my easiest plants. And that's all it took, was just that little piece of information. So yeah. I'm really excited about this next genus. Syngoniums are my absolute favorite. I love how there's just so many color variations and patterns. This one here is a Syngonium Moonshine. It's still green, but it has a sort of pale white cast to the leaves. I love how bouncy Syngoniums are. They remind me of just little butterflies, and they get bushy, and then the stems start to vine, and that's when you can propagate, which is another reason why I love Syngoniums, because they propagate so easily. This is an example of another smaller Syngonium that I have, Syngonium Red Queen. And you see it has longer, pointier leaves and a dusty pink color to it. Still has green on the leaves as well, but it is also a juvenile plant, so I've never had this one before and I don't see it around too much, so I'm excited to see how it matures and what it looks like as it matures. I just wanted to show these two different specimens here. This one doesn't need any water right now. It's sitting out nice and perky, but this Moonshine here is probably, I wouldn't water it just yet, but it's definitely on its way. And if you can see these leaves here, they're curling in a bit rather than sitting sort of flat and straight, and that's telling me that it's starting to get thirsty. When it's really thirsty, the stems or the petioles will droop, which I just love. I really love vocal plants, especially for hanging plants that I'm not getting up there and poking my finger in the soil all the time like all my other poor potted plants. Syngoniums are another plant that I have in super various amounts of light around my house. The color of the leaves can kind of determine how much light you need to give them. Pink Syngoniums, for example, usually appreciate a little bit more light to keep that pink variegation or that pink coloring. In saying that, the bigger pink Syngonium that I have is in really quite low light and it's still pink. So that's Syngoniums. Next up, I have a Peperomia Amigo Marcello. I probably just butchered that pronunciation a little bit, but that's fine. There are quite a lot of peperomias that I find super easy care, and I have some other peperomias on this list. This is the most easiest, possibly the most easiest plant that I own. It's still in the pot that I bought it in, this cute little hanging pot, and I believe it's just in peat. When they're happy, when they're doing well, these leaves are very firm, and I would just give the leaves a little bit of a squeeze. You can see that these are actually have some movement. So this plant is on the way. Normally these leaves do not move at all, and I don't find that I have to water this very often. I think it might even be once every 3, possibly even 4, maybe 3 weeks. It always has new growth popping out, doesn't get very high light. Oh, it's just always happy, and I love that. I so appreciate that. Thank you. So my next plant is a Hoya. This is one of those plants that I was purchasing from an online plant store specifically for a particular plant that I was looking for, and because I was buying that plant, you may as well chuck in some more. You know, you have to pay for shipping, so why not? So this is one of those plants. I didn't seek it out. I just kind of bought it. And I remember when it arrived and I unpackaged it and I nearly cried. Like, I was the most giddy I think I've ever been opening a plant, and I still have no idea why, but I just have this love affair with this Hoya. So the name is a bit of a thing. It was sold to me as a Hoya Sangii, but it is not that, and this Hoya is commonly mislabeled as that, as well as DS70, but it is actually unnamed. The plant doesn't have a name yet, but it has an affinity to, or it looks super similar to, the species Peturniae. Anyway, I think if you were to look for a Hoya to Sangii, or a Hoya DS70, or a Hoya species affinis Peturniae, you would find this. So when it came to me, this is not the pot that it came in. It was shipped bare rooted. This is just a pot that I've had from something else that was a bargain, but it was just this vine and not there's many leaves on the vine either. Since then I've taken quite a few cuttings of it and rooted them up and popped them back in this pot, I'm just waiting for them to start giving me some new growth. Now you can see on this top of this stem here, I have some new leaves. This nursery pot sits inside a hanging pot in my window, so it gets pretty good light, but the sun never comes and hits that window. It's always just sort of bright ambient or indirect light, and I forget to water this plant so often. I have to reach over my dining table to water it, which is just a pain. Just means that I never water this plant. It just chugs along. It just pops out new growth. It's like soft and velvety, kind of. It's a little bit velvety. I just love this Hoya. I really do. And I can't wait until it's a complete pot of trailing vines. So if you can find the plant with no name, I highly recommend it. Okay, so this is a bit of a funny plant for me. I saw this plant and it wasn't labeled at all, and the leaves when I first found it were super curly in like this. I thought that was how the plant was supposed to look, and I thought that that was just really cool, which is why I purchased it, only to get home and water the plant and to find out that it's not supposed to have curly leaves, and that it only has curly leaves when it's letting you know that it's thirsty. So the leaves right now are starting to curl in a little bit. You can see that this one here is quite curly. So again, it's another really vocal plant that lets me know when it's starting to get thirsty, and I'll wait until all the leaves are pretty curly, and then I just fill up this center hole in here with water, and it's happy. I thought when I first found this that it was a Dracaena. I'm not sure why. It's actually a bromeliad. I don't have a lot to do with Dracaenas or bromeliads. Bromeliad, Raceae, and it's either Raceae or Raceae. I don't know. Bromeliads aren't really my forte. It gets very low light actually. And yeah, how easy is that? I have another Peperomia meridiana. This was another just little cheapy sort of plant from Bunnings. It was way smaller when I bought it. It has grown a ton, and I've taken a ton of leaves for cuttings off this plant. More recently I actually had to pot it up a size, which usually takes a long time at Peperomia because they have super fine roots, but here we are. Has these thick sort of red-brown, almost tree trunk stems, and then the red little petioles come off there, and they have these big, lush, succulent, heart-shaped leaves. Again, I just test this. I just go like this, a light little squeeze on the leaves. I've never watered this plant very often at all. I used to live on the windowsill in my bathroom, which just doesn't get a lot of light at all. It also lived next to that windowsill for nearly a year, and I live in a really cold area, and it never had a problem with that, which I'm quite surprised by. Such a sturdy Peperomia. It now lives in my IKEA greenhouse cabinet, which it just doesn't have to at all. It really doesn't need to be in there. I only gave it prime real estate because of how much I love it, and I felt like it deserved it. This is another plant that I never expected to love as much as I do, and it really does make me giddy when I look at it and when I water it and when I check in on it and when I see its new growth. I'm just so proud of this plant. I do think it might need a sort of a stake to lean on. It's getting a little bit wobbly as it's getting bigger, but I just love that it's kind of like has a little bit of a tiny tree vibe. It's a lot of fun. So this is another Peperomia, but it is the last Peperomia that I've put on this list. This is my Peperomia Frost. It just has this shiny, almost sparkly silver sheen all over. This sort of Peperomia with this type of leaf, similar to a Caparata, but a little bit plumper. But anyway, this type of Peperomia does come in a lot of different colors, but I find this silvery frost variety to just be stupidly easy to care for. It feels ridiculous. It's just another plant that I'll give the leaves a bit of a squeeze. This one is quite thirsty, so the leaves are super soft when they're full of water and juicy and plump. They hardly fold up at all. This is the plant that lives on my coffee table, and my coffee table gets various amounts of light because my coffee table gets pushed around my lounge room and sits in different places around my lounge room every day. This is always getting reasonably low light, and it is lush, it is happy, it is beautiful. Happy in most light situations and super vocal about when it's thirsty. Love that. I think this one might be my sort of most obvious easy care plant on this list, but it's a bit hard not to include it, to be honest. This is a Hoya This is a Hoya pubicalyx. I have a number of these around my house, again in a number of different light settings. So I have one mounted on a piece of wood in my kitchen, I have one in a macrame hanger on my photo wall, and I have this guy here, which is more new to my collection and I haven't placed anywhere or potted yet. I have 3 pubicalyx around my house, and they are 3 different sort of varieties of pubicalyx, but I find them all as easy as each other. This one here is the Royal Hawaiian variation, so it gets these really sort of plum coloured, brownie plum coloured new growth. I can show you these little baby leaves. Oh, so cute! The pubicalyx that I have on my photo wall is the splash variety, and then I have the standard variety mounted on the corkwood in my kitchen. So actually all my pubicalyx are in quite low light settings. I think every plant that I've mentioned so far has been in pretty low light because my house is pretty low light. But they would also be happy in really quite bright, maybe even direct sunlight. So wherever you put them, they're going to be quite happy. It's yet another plant that I'll give the leaves a little bit of a squeeze to see how thirsty they are. Again, they're a little bit softer when they're looking for some water, and they're way more succulent when they're not thirsty. This plant can hang, it can trail around and climb things. It's always going to be looking for something to climb. So if you are hanging the pot, don't hang it directly next to anything that it could just kind of reach over and start climbing its little arms all over. But this really is just one of the easiest Hoyas available. And I got this one here for $10. $10. Sold. All right, we're up to the very last plant on the list, and that is Tradescantia. Tradescantia is probably another one that's on a lot of easy care plant lists because they are literally a weed. Some varieties are easier than others. This variety here is the Tradescantia multiflora, otherwise known as the Tahitian bridal veil. Beautiful thing about this plant is the underside, which is, if I lift up here, you're going to see my naked pot. I'm exposing her. Underneath the leaves are purple, which is beautiful. I love that. With the green there and then the little tiny white flowers. It really is such a beautiful plant. This pot lives outside in my very cold environment and it's just lush and beautiful and happy and flowering. It doesn't receive any direct light throughout the day, but it does get very bright in direct light all day. I next to never water this particular Tradescantia because it's outside and I often forget to water my plants outside, and it's also undercover so it doesn't get rain. I have to admit that this pot, oop, it's her booty. I have to admit that this very tall, sort of long glazed ceramic pot does hold on to a lot of moisture, so that probably helps with the fact that I water this once every month, 2 months, maybe 3 months. If you do leave them too long with between waterings, they can get some sort of dry, crispy leaves. You can see at the base there. But I'm just not worried about it. Plants are allowed to have some dry leaves. It's a plant, it's not perfect. It is perfect, just the way it is. I have 2 other varieties of Tradescantia, although I do think that the bridal veil is probably my favorite. So these are some cuttings of a Tradescantia zebrina. I bought a big hanging pot of this for my mum for, I think, Mother's Day. And I took some cuttings off it, of course. She also gave me this vase here, which I just have full of water, and these are currently sitting in water, growing roots. Can you focus, please? Thanks. These had lots of roots. These could be potted up very easily, like a month ago. But I actually really like it in this vase. I like it being her hair. I think that's super cute. And this sits in my kitchen windowsill and receives pretty low light, and it's still rooted and still happy. I've taken, I think, 3 lots of cuttings off of these cuttings. It honestly just grows like a weed. I can't stop it. I can't slow it down. One of the reasons that I don't pot this up is I'm a little bit scared that I won't be able to control it. And the last variety of Tradescantia that I have is probably the most difficult variety out of the 3, but still not super difficult at all. So it's this Tradescantia tricolor, which is just beautiful. It really is. It's such a stunning plant. It also has the purple undersides to the leaves. Oh, I just love it. So this little clear nursery pot sits inside a hanging pot in my window, so it receives pretty good light. Never direct sunlight though. I do have some crispy brown leaves here from when the plant was acclimating to my house, but again, it just doesn't faze me. Kind of looks all weird and squonky here because normally these stems are kind of growing up the string of the pot. Kind of blows my mind that a plant can be this beautiful and still be easy care. Amazing. It really is amazing. So again, I just water this plant once it starts looking a little droopy, and yeah. Okay, so that was my list of 10 super easy care houseplants. Plants like the peperomia and the string of hearts and the string of pearls I found super intimidating when I was first getting into houseplants, and rightfully so. A lot of those plants are quite susceptible to root rot, but once I learnt the trick, being able to feel the succulence of the leaves to determine how thirsty the plant is, I've never killed another peperomia or string of anything or Hoya. It's amazing. It is been the most helpful tip of my plant experience so far, definitely, without a doubt. So I think that's all I have to say. Thanks for watching. That's a thing I should say. Thanks for watching. I hope you try out some of these plants in your own home because I think they're all really funky and I love them. And then you can have a home jungle too. Okay, I think I'm done.